Let's talk about probably the I would say one of the most uncontrollable situations that a gentleman, once again, I use that term loosely, gentlemen, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Andrew Tate, controversial figure. We actually spoke about Andrew Tate months ago. I had a quick look back. I think it was episode 7 or 6 that we actually spoke about Andrew Tate. And Andrew Tate is actually he rose to stardom. He was a bit of a self-help guru, championing kind of masculinity, and he's been controversial because it's been leading into toxic masculinity, and or argued that it is. Now, since our last filming where we spoke about him being controversial, he's since been arrested. And he's been all over the news over the last number of months, where he's actually been kept in jail, in a Romanian jail, under charges which he's not actually technically charged yet. He's just been arrested, and they say they're detaining him for safety, for public safety, they say. And there's a lot of arguments both ways whether this is actually whether it's actually a real charges, whether he's actually done it, or whether it's the matrix that are against him and stuff like that. And there's this law in Romania that says they can detain him for up to 180 days. Now, it's 30 days at a time. Every 30 days, they have to reapply to keep him and his brother, Tristan Tate, detained. And just yesterday for me here, probably 2 days ago for you there in Australia, if you're watching from that side of the planet, he lost his appeal to try to get out because they claim he's a flight risk and everything like that. Now, controversial figure, yes, but I don't really want to talk about that. I don't really want to talk about the charges against him because it's all hearsay. No one knows yet. There's no evidence being given yet. But talking about being control the controllables, he is someone that is in a foreign country, being arrested by their legal system or judiciary system, and is in detention in a different country and being detained, which is really uncontrollable. And so we in business, in life, find ourselves sometimes in situations that we can't control. Sometimes we find ourselves in a place where we think we could do better or change or something like that, but we do find ourselves in situations where we just cannot control our situation, so we need to control what we control. So, Dr. Rod, how would you give someone advice let's obviously talk about Andrew Tate, someone who is a very positive person. He's let's say he's a personal development guru. He's this, he looks positively on life, and he's that sort of thing. He has affluent life, all that sort of stuff. He's had all of that taken away from him. He's in a foreign country, locked up, kind of seemingly unfair. What advice would you give to him in that state for him to maintain his composure as a leader?
Well, I think, you said at the outset, Craig, that you've got to control the controllables, and you can't allow yourself to worry too much about those things that are actually outside your control. I mean, obviously, he has tried through legal means to gain his freedom. But at this point, of course, he's confirmed to remain in custody until the 29th of March. So although he's done his best to get out, he hasn't been able to get out at this point. And look, his case is not all that uncommon, of course, where business people, for example, are operating in a foreign country. They don't necessarily understand the local legal system fully, and they can fall foul of that system. As I recall, there's a bit of an irony here, because one of his reasons for moving to Romania and buying home there was that he thought he'd actually have more freedom to do the kinds of things that he does.
Yeah.
But it seems as if his expectations haven't been met. And of course, that's something that we have to confront as well as leaders or as people involved in business.
Yeah, I like that, because he went there because he kind of wanted to, let's say, skirt the system, so to speak, and operate slightly outside the realms. And so he wanted to escape something, but then there's always a risk. There's always challenges at that side. I suppose I kind of find, I find myself in the same situation. But let me clarify. I'm nowhere doing anything illegal or anything immoral or anything like that, like he's been accused of doing. What I'm saying is, in the middle of COVID, my wife and I, we just had a baby, weren't even able to see our family in Australia, and everything. We were just so restricted. And so we decided to move to the Dominican Republic. We felt that God also called us to move here for other reasons as well. But that aside, we moved here to the Dominican Republic to a different country, to avoid, to kind of get out of some of the challenges they're facing, simple things like the rent increases and the control of the government and everything like that. And yeah, I came here, and while I was, let's say, escaping those things, I also then stepped into other challenges that I face, the language barrier, the cultural, differences,
with potential outcomes. Now, I have no idea whether that was part of the process either he or you, frankly, went through prior to making that decision. And it's not always easy to make an assessment of risks, because most of the time risk is interpreted as a kind of probabilistic thing, and you can only base a probability on repeated experiments. And when you're making a decision to move country, or maybe to change the job you're in or something like that, you really don't have a history of those kinds of moves, so to form a really good probability. So a lot of it has to be, if you like, a gut feeling. But I do think that we must be wise enough to understand that most of the choices that we make as leaders or as business people have some degree of risk attached to them.
Yeah.
And look, I think it's also very helpful to be able to tap into advisors. So in Andrew Tate's case, obviously, he's tapped into legal advisors in an effort to get out of jail, so to speak. For you, it's been a little bit more difficult, but as many people will know, you do actually have a board of directors, and you're in constant touch with people like myself for advice and support, and of course for prayer. And I think that's also pretty important.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I could draw from this situation, it made me think about what would I do in his situation. At risk of becoming too spiritual about it, I would say what he can control right now is his mental health, right? We can only control how we react and respond to something. He's at the whims of everyone else. He's in a jail cell. He's being moved around. He's in and out of court, appeals, all that sort of stuff. He's not in control of all those things, but he can control his mental health. And one of the things that I thought of when I was kind of considering what would I do in this situation is I'll just make sure that I was super close with God, because that's the one thing you can do during this time. It's almost a forced prayer and fasting season or whatever, like he's forced to be in a jail cell. So look at what is the advantages of that. Great. He's got solitude. He can just sit in prayer and spend time with the Lord and just get connected that way. I kind of feel that's what I'll do. And as you know, I actually did that last week. I actually traveled away. I found that people think things were just getting a little bit too much, and I wasn't reacting right, everything like that. So I went away for a couple of days to the mountains, house by myself, and just went and reconnected with God, because that's what I could control. I could get centered myself. I could make sure that I was centered, because there's all these things happening around me that I can't control, but I can control myself, my mental capacity. And I knew I was kind of like, let's say, burning the candle at both ends. And so I got away and spent some time with the Lord, and got into the Bible, got into prayer, and had an amazing couple of days out in the mountains. And that's probably one thing that I could say to Andrew Tate and to anyone else that seems like they are. Let's say you're in it, you feel like you're trapped in a prison cell. Maybe and that's probably one thing that I could prison cell. But there are times in leadership, in ministry, in business, in life with our families, sometimes we can just feel like we're trapped. Let's just make sure we stay centered, because we as the leaders, everyone else around us is relying on us. They're relying on our strength. They're relying on our stability as a leader. And so we need to control ourselves, and we can only do that by being centered with Christ. And but yeah, as Dr. Rod said, surround yourself with advisors, get connected with God, and that's how you can control the controllables when you feel like you are being trapped, or you're in a situation that you are confined to.
Exactly. Look, the only thing I would add to that, Craig, is that I am always in control of how I react to anything that's happening in my environment. But you've got to know that, you've got to have decided that, and you have to have practiced that long before you're in a situation where it becomes imperative.
That's really good. Yeah. It's probably, it is a very commonly used, it's very cliched, is the only thing you control is yourself, or the only thing you can control is your reactions. It's cliche because it's true. So many people say it because it's true. If we get, and that's like with our leadership program, shameless plug, link in the description. In our free leadership development program, we spend the first 10 weeks focusing on getting to discover who we are and how God has created us and what purpose He's created us for. And then the next 10 weeks on our mindset. So we spend the first 20 weeks of a year-long program just working on ourselves, because we are the ones that can control us. And we actually have a whole teaching on having the right headspace and being prepared mentally for leadership as well. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If it challenged your leadership or inspired you in some way, put a comment below. And if you want to watch the full episode or more content like this, check out our channel. And hey, consider subscribing while you're there.